This is Weights and Wealth, your one-stop shop for entertaining education on building a stronger body and bank account.
We are not doctors or financial advisors and must warn you this is not medical or investing advice. It is for your entertainment. Welcome back to another episode of Weights and Wealth. Today we'll be talking a little bit about the Army TSP and then also the combat fitness test.
Yes, this is a Army heavy episode on the weights and the wealth side. So if you're not in the military, you can feel free to skip over this episode and go watch an episode that you've missed in the past. But for all of our military and Army people out there, this episode should be hopefully very beneficial to you on the wealth side and the weight side. So
yeah, so at least as far as the TSP goes, I'll be talking about both federal employees and then also the military.
Oh, so the military, federal employees too.
Yes, the military definitely has a leg up, but the retirement plan is great for both.
Our shout out for this episode goes to Mitch from Korea. On Apple Podcasts, a review, he wrote, "Great topics and wisdom in a manageable format." Thank you, Mitch, for giving us a 5-star review. For everyone else out there, if you give a 5-star review, you are also going to be entered into the monthly raffle. For Wealth Wisdom of the Week, Nick, what do you have for us?
We have if your offer or if your employer offers a match to a retirement plan, take full advantage of it because that's an immediate 100% return on your investment. Mm-hmm. So if your employer offers a 3% match, if you put 3% in, that's 100% return. If they do something where if you put in 6%, then they'll contribute 3%. That's a 50% return. Regardless, you're not going to get that anywhere else. So just try to take full advantage of it.
So whatever your employer will match up till for like a 401k, make sure that you contribute at least that much percent.
Right. Yep.
All right, moving on. Our intro article is How to Start a Cult, 15 Steps with Pictures from WikiHow.
Yep. So there was this viral TikTok that kind of went around about this guy at Harvard who sort of started a cult. It was around, they would just pick something for the week. One of the things they picked was pool. So they would just play pool. They had pool noodles. They would pool their money and just do all this sort of stuff. And it just blew up. And he had a video of one of their choosings where they choose the word for the week and it was packed and people were getting super excited. So to start a cult, you just got to find something that can create a passion, create a few rules, come up with some vocabulary, and then recruit people.
Yep. You'll see a lot of like podcasts or businesses will give a name to their customers or the people that listen to them to try to make them feel like they're a part of something. We don't have anything like that for Weights and Wealth.
But we should come up with something.
I guess we got to step up our marketing.
Yeah.
We'll link the article in case you're interested in that in the show notes.
But yeah, kind of still around human psychology. Our talk for today are some social experiments. So one really popular one was the Stanford prison experiment. That one was on Netflix. I'm not sure if it still is. But basically Stanford recruited a few students who just needed some extra money. They paid them like $20 and set some people up as prison guards and then others as prisoners and just kind of wanted to see how it went.
Yeah, it was of the people that showed up, they were randomly divided into the two groups. If you're not familiar with the Stanford prison experiment, definitely check it out. But basically, the groups got split up into fake prisoners and fake guards, and they had to shut down the experiment because super quickly, the people that were the guards started like beating and torturing the prisoners for absolutely no reason, just solely based off the fact that they had been given this power and the other people were in some way lower, even though there was the only division was that this group was told they were the guards and this group was told that they were the prisoners.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
And I think some of those students knew each other beforehand too. Like they all talked before the experiment, talked about the experiment, were getting along very well. And then within a few days, the people who were the guards were just absolutely abusing the prisoners.
Do you remember how long it lasted before they shut it down?
I don't, but it was it was very quick. Like they didn't go
rapidly
to the full
escalated. I think you see that a little bit today with people wanting to manage other people. I feel like anytime someone gets some position of authority or power from the government, it becomes a personal mission of theirs to tell other people what to do. I feel like you see this with a lot of government employees.
Yes. And especially with, I like as far as politicians go, I think the people who want to be a politician and have that power probably shouldn't, whereas most people don't really want to have that power and that sort of influence, and those are the kind of people that should be leading. So it's just kind of, they just kind of get pit against each other.
Yeah. Have you ever had, like, aside from the DMV, have you ever gone somewhere and just gotten a horrible government employee?
I mean, I don't think I've been anywhere other than the DMV.
So recently when Alex and I, there's a problem with our marriage license where, like, we had signed where there was supposed to be a date. Something was in the wrong block. So in Charleston, we went to, like, the government courthouse building and we had to get our marriage certificate rectified and fixed. And the lady there was just terrible, like just classic horrible government employee. And she basically said, like, no, you can't do that. Like, take this form and fill it out from scratch and then go see a judge. And this other lady in the office overheard her and just came over, signed it for us, and then we were on our way. It's like the lady the superior that was at the front desk just did not want to help and was trying to make it difficult for us when we literally just needed a random signature on it. We didn't need to go see a judge or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like you get a lot of those people working in the government.
Yep. Should we get into the topic for today?
Yeah. All the government employees that we just offended.
We'll be getting this killer retirement program. So we'll start out with the TSP. So this is a defined benefit program, which these have been on the decline in the private sector. So this is like a pension, essentially, where you know how much money you're getting every year. So you're paying into this system and then you know how much money you'll be getting in retirement. Whereas your traditional 401k or IRA, those are based on like the market return. So that's essentially like the difference between a defined benefit plan and then a defined contribution plan. And the way that the federal TSP works for non-uniformed civilians, essentially, there's a 1% multiplier times your length of service times your high 3 years of average pay. So you take the number of years that you worked, and it maxes out at 20.
Okay.
Multiply it by 1%, and then the average of your 3 highest years of earnings. And the only difference between a civilian and a member of the military is that it's 2% for the military rather than 1% for a civilian.
Yes, and I'm not sure how civilian works. A civilian that you have to put in 20 years to get that, because in the military, you only get that retirement pension, basically, if you do a full 20 years. There's other ways you get money with the military, right? With like the TSP, where you can invest into like a 401k, but to get the salaried pension after you retire in the military, you have to put 20 years in.
Yes. Well, that's for the full benefit. At least for the civilian one, it starts vesting after 5 years.
Okay.
So you'll get the pension after 5 years, but it's just a lot less because that 5 years goes into the calculation rather than the 20 years.
It's only 5%.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas military, it's like 20 years, and then it goes based off your pay grade that you were when you retired.
Yes. Yeah. So the required contribution is, and this is across the board, I don't think that you get the opportunity to opt out, is 4.4%, which you could invest that in the market if it wasn't going here. But the return is just not nearly as good. So I have an example for somebody who is in the military for 20 years. First year, they're making $40,000. And then I just kind of assumed like a 3% growth in income per year. So they're making between $66,000 and $70,000 for the last 3 years. So they're getting about $27,000 per year once they retire from the military. And then assuming that they get another job, pay all their own expenses, and don't invest another dime, by the time that they retire at age 65, they'll have $2.1 million just sitting there ready for retirement.
A lot of the guys that get out at 20 years, they pick up another part-time job or a full-time job, and they've got that basically pension. So it's a really nice deal if you ride out 20 years.
Yeah. And I think I messed up the vocabulary in the beginning. So that's the pension. And then there's also the TSP, which is more like a traditional IRA.
Yep.
And it starts at 5% and they match the full 5%.
Yep.
So there's no point in not doing that because that's that 100% return that you get right away. So you should definitely contribute to that as well. And on the same scenario, if you start doing that as soon as you get in the military, you have $4,000 per year going into your TSP. And then by the time you're 65, you'll have 1.3 million. So if you add those two together, you're at 3.5 million or so. So this, when people talk about how good the retirement benefits are for the military, this is what they're talking about.
Yeah. And so for anyone that's not doing 20 years in the military, you should still be contributing to that TSP because it's like the Army's 401k, right? So they match up to 5%. There's some certain stipulations around that. I think it doesn't start until like a year and a half or 2 years in. So for the first year and a half or 2 years that I was in, I was paying that. I was doing that 5% option, but the government, I don't think, was matching until more recently. But I have mine. If you're in the Army, go to Army MyPay and then go into your LES. If you're in a different branch, find your LES, whatever website you use, and then just go to the TSP tab, and then you can set the percentages that you want to take directly out of your paycheck. And then it's automated for you, and the government will start matching it up to 5%. So all soldiers should be doing this. That money, if it never hits your account and it's going straight into that TSP, you're going to be a lot better off because it doesn't feel like you're investing, but you are getting those numbers that Nick was saying with that 1.3 million if you just let it keep contributing.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you really don't need to invest outside of your TSP or the pension plan because it just sets you up so well. If you do want to invest beyond that, I would do an IRA rather than putting more money into the TSP because those are target funds and you just have more control over an IRA.
Yeah.
But you really don't need to put any money into that.
So that's what I do. And that's probably a good idea for soldiers is to do that 5% that will get matched into the TSP. And then whatever other money you want to put into investing, you can do other investments, whether it's an IRA or metals like gold and silver or real estate or businesses. There's so many different ways to invest. Investing seems so difficult, but one of the things we try to show people on this show is the different ways that you can get into investing, because the earlier you start, the better.
Yeah, and you also are planning on spending your entire working career in the military, right? Which is why it's very smart to invest outside of your TSP, because you won't be getting the pension at the end. So it's good to kind of have a backup if you don't plan on spending the full 20 years in the military. So
you would say for people that aren't planning on doing 20 in the military, the math we don't want to recommend, obviously, because as the intro says, it's not financial advice. But based off the math, it's good for people that aren't planning on doing 20 years to match up to 5% in the TSP and then also invest a little bit outside of that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just because like the main benefit of working in the government is that pension plan. Like that is, it way outpaces the stock market for any sort of retirement plan. So that was all I had. Do you have any questions or anything else you wanted to bring up for?
Yes. For those soldiers that aren't planning on doing a full 20, do you know how their money rolls over from the TSP once they're out of the military? Does it go into a separate IRA? Do they keep it in that TSP account? How do they gain access to that money after they're out?
So, I mean, I didn't look this up specifically, but I imagine it's very similar to a 401k.
How does that work for normally?
So you can keep your money in the 401k with your employer. So I imagine you could keep it with the government, have your TSP, or you could roll it over into an IRA, which is what I did when I left my last company, just because you have a lot more control over an IRA. Because at least with the TSP and then 401ks, you're very limited into what you can select. Like it's a lot of these target funds. So I was in like a 2060 target fund, which is, I think, when I would turn 65. But the return is usually not as good as the S&P does. Okay.
And then for any of the military guys that are looking in their LES when they're choosing how to set up their TSP, there's an option where you can choose percents for Roth and traditional in the settings for those percentages. Do you want to help out the soldiers on the traditional versus a Roth and benefits of the two for when they're investing in the TSP?
Yeah, so generally, like the rule of thumb is when your income is lower, Roth is a lot more attractive.
Okay.
Because when you invest in a traditional, it essentially subtracts from your income for the year.
Okay.
So say you made $40,000 and you put $5,000 into a traditional TSP, you're only taxed on $35,000. Okay. Right. But I don't know what the marginal rate is at 40,000. We'll say it's 10%. You're only saving $500 in taxes.
So for any like junior enlisted soldier, the math is better for them to do a Roth?
Yes.
Okay.
Generally, yeah. I mean, everybody's situation is unique, so it varies a lot. I mean, I do a Roth. I put all my money into a Roth just because you don't know future tax rates. Like if tax rates went way up, Roths would be doing extremely well because you aren't taxed on the earnings or any sort of contribution when you pull it out. Whereas the traditional, you're taxed at your ordinary rates when you pull money out.
Okay. All right. So hopefully that clears that up for any of the young soldiers that are looking at contributing to their TSP. If you have any questions, shoot us a DM on Instagram. It's at Weights and Wealth Podcast, and Nick will answer those questions for you. Do you have anything else, Nick, or are we ready to move on to the ACFT?
We can move on to the ACFT.
All right. The ever-changing and elusive ACFT scoring. ACFT, Army Combat Fitness Test, looks like it might be on its way out after only a short 2-year stint in the Army. The DC politics, unfortunately, impact the force quite a bit. It looked at the very beginning of the ACFT rollout like there was going to be one standard score regardless of gender or age, which a lot of people were happy about, because it seems like equality, right? Just, can you do it or can you not get it? Everyone's graded on the same scale. Because one of the things people didn't like about the old Army fitness test, the ACFT, was how the scales were different and it didn't seem like as good of a fitness test for combat, which is what the ACFT was supposed to fix. RIP to the leg tuck. Everyone in the Army knows that they got rid of the leg tuck and put a plank in because some people couldn't do leg tucks. We'll get to that when we get to the plank event. So I'll just go through each event here and how you can train for it to get a better score. I think that anyone that does compound lifts and is in decent shape and adds running once or twice a week should be able to score a 550, which is a pretty good score. It's out of 600. People in the Army that this is geared toward will know what a 550 is. So the first thing we've got is the trap bar deadlift for 3 reps. So to train for this, you want to be doing deadlift variations and squat variations, and then as a third way to train for it, I added farmer's carries, because some people, if this is you, definitely maybe add in farmer's carries. Some people, when they go to lift up the trap bar, it's heavy. They're not used to balancing weight in their hands, and the bar will tip forward or backwards because they're just not used to moving muscles in their hands slightly to balance something and get it to go straight in front and behind them. So if that's you, if you struggle with the bar tilting forward or backward when you're trying to do that deadlift, maybe start adding some farmer's carries in with some of the Rogue farmer carry handles, or little bars, something where the weight is in front and behind and you have to work on shifting that weight with your hands to keep it level. Nick, do you have anything that you like to do to train for trap bar deadlift? Anything you've seen that carries over well?
I mean, I do a lot of just conventional straight bar deadlifts. So farmer's carries are huge. Like, it's been helping my deadlift a lot. Just because the bar doesn't feel as heavy in my hands. So I just feel a lot more secure when I'm pulling it up. Another one, I've been doing a lot of pendlay rows. And I think that's been aiding my deadlift like a lot too. I just being able to pull the bar all the way up, it just makes the bar feel lighter again. In
that bent over position.
Yeah.
So having to brace yourself and stay in that bent over position with the pendlay row. That's a good additional lift. But I think the main money makers here for the deadlift are going to be training trap bar deadlift, other deadlift variations. You can do conventional deadlift if you know how to do that. A lot of concern that people have with the deadlift in this test is that a lot of people don't know how to deadlift. If you don't know how to deadlift, go to an NCO or I guess an officer if there's no NCOs that lift, but they should have NCOs that lift in your formation. Go to one of them, ask them to teach you how to deadlift. We also have the H2F program that the Army is really starting to dive into, and you should have a strength coach with your unit that can teach you how to deadlift. I know sometimes they'll offer classes at inconvenient times. You might have to show up early or stay late for one of those classes, but that's well worth it if you learn how to deadlift properly.
Yeah. And I mean, the biggest way to get better at a specific lift is just by doing that lift. Like, accessories are great, but I'm doing a peaking program right now. So I can peak my squat, bench, and deadlift, and that's pretty much all I'm doing. Yeah. And the weights have been going up.
Yeah. So practice the lift and you'll get better at it. So the next event that we've got in the ACFT is the standing power throw. Now, if you've got long orangutan arms like I do, the standing power throw is very easy. It's just a catapult. If you got long arms, that ball just moves. If you have short arms, This is where I finally get back at you for how easy bench pressing is for you. So if you're good at bench pressing, you might not be good at the standing power throw. So some things you can do to practice for the standing power throw is practice throwing that 10-pound medicine ball. Because if you practice that and you get the release point down, I think the release point is probably the most important aspect of this. You'll see a lot of strong people go up to that line at the ACFT and they'll chuck that ball and they'll release it way too early and it will just go straight up, or they'll release it way too late and it will start with a downward trajectory behind them. So for those listening that don't know, the standing power throw, you're standing with your back to a line and you throw the ball behind you. So you're getting triple extension. So any lift, any Olympic lift that's training triple extension is going to be really good for this. Focus on that power generation. If you don't know how to do Olympic lifts, I wouldn't say that you should learn in order to train for this event. You can try box jumps. And then a big thing that I think people miss here is you can train for this event by grabbing a bigger medicine ball. If you practice throwing a 20-pound medicine ball, or if you work up to a 14-pound and then a 20-pound, if you train with those heavier medicine balls, the 10-pound medicine ball is going to feel super light and it's going to be easier to throw that thing further. And then another movement that I added for this one to help train for this is a dumbbell pullover, because when you do a dumbbell pullover, your lats have to stretch all the way up and you gain that overhead mobility with your arms. So for a lot of people in the Army that have horrible mobility and their joints are all messed up, if that's you, if your shoulders are so forward from carrying a ruck, try to gain shoulder mobility. Do shoulder mobility exercises. Focus on gaining range of motion with a dumbbell pullover, some pressing. Those should help you be able to get your arms all the way up so you can throw that ball behind you. Moving on to the hand release push-up. For this, I like different bench press variations, obviously, to grow your chest and your shoulders and triceps. For those that don't know, a hand release push-up is where you do a push-up and then at the bottom, when your chest is on the ground, you have to move your arms out in a T. So your shoulders get tired a lot faster than on a regular push-up, and it kills your momentum after every rep because you have to start all the way from the ground. You can't just jackhammer them out. So for this, I really like a lot of different bench press variations. A reverse grip bench might give you a little more bang for your buck with just the whole shoulder compared to other bench press variations for something like a hand release push-up. And then also, of course, practice those hand release push-ups. Don't max out. A lot of people, when they'll train for any of the Army fitness tests, they'll just do as many push-ups as you can do. This is classic Army PT. Just do as many push-ups and as many sit-ups as you can do, and we're just going to do that for rounds. I wouldn't do that. I would focus on doing clusters of, if 60 is how many you can do, I would focus on doing clusters of 40 in a workout. That's going to help you progress faster than just doing as many reps as you can every single time. Because you'll be able to do, if you do 4 sets of 40, if you can normally do 60, instead of a set of 60 and a set of 35, you're going to get a lot more out of that workout doing multiple sets of 40. And then the other thing I've got for the hand release push-up is an upright row, not like a barbell row, but where you're, what else is it called? It's got another name as well. Some people call it something else.
I've always just called it an upright row. An upright row.
Okay, yeah. So some people call it something else. It's one of those exercises that gets demonized a lot on social media. People will say, don't do this exercise. It's bad for your shoulders. That was one of the number one exercises for me putting width on my shoulders and growing those medial delts or lateral delts. So something that the upright row gives you is it has your shoulders up in that position that you find yourself in the middle of the hand release push-up. So you can also do lateral raises, but upright row I think is a really good movement for the hand release push-up. The next event that we have is a sprint drag carry. So Nick, I'm going to get your 2 cents here on what you like to do as far as sled work and farmers carries to help get better at those exercises.
Well, what's a sprint drag carry?
The sprint drag carry is like you sprint and then like back and forth from the line, like 10 meters, 20 meters, I can't remember. And then you drag a sled backwards that's got like 90 pounds on it. And then you carry 2 kettlebells and then you do like a side shuffle and then you sprint again. But basically, for this, you should train sled drags and pushes, heavy farmer walks. What are some of the things you like to do, those turf exercises that help with those kinds of movements?
I mean, I love farmer's walks. I was just talking about it. I'll just grab, a set of dumbbells that is like pretty heavy, and I'll walk just 60 feet with them or so. Mm-hmm. And then I'll take like a 30-second rest and then walk back, which sounds like it's pretty applicable to this because you're using like your grip pretty consistently. Like you don't get a huge rest. As far as pushes go, I don't do a ton of them. But I would imagine just regular barbell squatting would help a lot. I do a lot of unilateral work. So, lunges, stuff like that, because you're pushing with one leg. So
yeah, I've got Bulgarian split squats on here as an assisting exercise for training for the sprint drag carry, because watching people do the sprint drag carry is hilarious because their legs turn to jelly, and then on the last sprint at the end, their legs are like barely moving and they're all wobbly as they're trying to sprint back and get at the best time they can. But if you train the sled drag really gets people. So I would load up heavy sled drags so that your legs are accustomed to being able to drag that sled and doesn't feel as heavy, because that kills a lot of people. Carrying the kettlebells is actually pretty easy to train for. Just keep training different variations of farmer carries. And I like what Nick said about that 30-second rest period, because that will help you build strength and especially build endurance, which is really what you need for that sprint drag carry. If you're maxing out that event for points and you're doing a minute 30 seconds, like that's still a long time to be sprinting, dragging, and carrying. So you definitely want to build that endurance, whether you're doing high rep Bulgarian split squats, high rep barbell squats would really help, because if you're doing a set of 20 squats, you need a lot of endurance to be able to do that. So for sprint drag carry, I would train obviously the sled drags, sled pushes even, and then different farmer walk variations. And then I would do high rep Bulgarian split squats, barbell squats if your legs get smoked during this event. The next event, RIP to the leg tuck. I have a quick story about the leg tuck. When I was a trainer up in Milwaukee, a National Guard service member came in, said, I can't get any leg tucks on this event. And my manager sent her over to me because he's like, oh, he's an Army guy. He might be able to help you with whatever it is that you're talking about. And although she could do 0, after about 10 to 15 minutes, she was able to do 3 to 4 on multiple sets. And the reason that a lot of people, in my opinion, were getting 0 on the leg tuck was that they didn't know how to do the exercise properly. And they weren't actually using their core. It's just like with sit-ups where people use their hip flexors instead of the rectus abdominis, those six-pack ab muscles. So it's a shame that they got rid of the leg tuck, just because some people didn't want to learn how to do the exercise and they didn't want a certain number of people to fail. But if you're not meeting the standard, you're not meeting the standard. So
wait, is this like a leg raise?
Yeah, it's sitting... like, so there's a bar above you and your hands are kind of both in like a neutral position on a pull-up bar. And then all you had to do was touch your knees to your elbows. So if you do like a hanging leg raise where you're actually curling the vertebrae in your back, it's pretty easy. You could even use your arms and your biceps to help with momentum, doing like a half little pull up. But a lot of people would just kind of hang there like a limp fish from a line and just try to swing their knees up with their hip flexors. It's like you're doing this completely wrong. So many people that got 0, if I had 5 minutes with them, could easily get them doing at least 1 or 2. But the leg tuck is behind us, unfortunately. They then made the maxing out from 20 leg tucks, which is pretty easy for a lot of people. Or I shouldn't say pretty easy for a lot of people, but for people that are really into lifting and have a like lower percent body fat, the leg tuck was not a challenging event. And now it's like a 3.5 minute plank to max that event, which is way harder.
I don't know. I don't think I could do that.
Yeah,
because I don't do any like isometric holds.
Yeah.
They're all moving. That sounds a lot harder than lifting your legs up.
On the low side, it's easier for people to pass the minimum if they couldn't do a leg tuck and just do like a 1.5 minute plank. But on the high side, doing like a 3.5 minute plank is a lot more challenging than those leg tucks. But I digress. It's behind us. So for a plank, I recommend that you plank. Some other things you can do are med ball dead bugs, where you're training that core and you're keeping your low back in that slight position of flexion with your low back against the ground, and you're challenging those abs to keep your ribs kind of flexed slightly towards your pelvis. That's basically what you're going to be doing with a plank, except instead of being on your back, you'll be on your elbows with your belly towards the ground, obviously. But doing something where you're challenging that dead bug position and you have a weight in your hand is going to offer a lot more resistance than something like a plank. Also, I think the front leaning rest is a more challenging position than the plank. So if your shoulders are what's giving out really on the plank, if your core is fine, but your shoulders are giving out, try practicing that front leaning rest position. Do a little bring Sally up, bring Sally down push up thing. That'll murder your shoulders for the plank. We used to do that. So when I was in ROTC for Ranger Challenge, we would do that all the time in PT, and it was just brutal. And the guy that was the Ranger Challenge captain when I was a freshman was also in the fraternity that Nick and I rushed, and he made all the pledges do it too. And it was funny to see the difference between those two groups, how long people lasted. But
I mean, I always like getting that one because you and I were probably like the two people that could actually finish it.
Oh yeah, we could just murder the push-ups.
Because everybody started dying after like the first minute or so.
No,
we were
the first just 15 to 20 seconds. All those guys that didn't lift and just drank beer all the time. I mean, we drank a lot of beer, but
we also lifted. So.
Yeah, we were in way better shape and we were able to do it, but that was funny. Yeah. The last event we've got here is the run. For the run, the whole max and min time for the run is shifted down from the old APFT. So, it's a slower time to max or to pass because you're doing those other leg strength and endurance events before, like the sprint, drag, carry, and the deadlift. They make the run a little bit easier. It's still a 2-mile run, but if you're running during PT, you should be okay during the run. I think a lot of people on running just kind of give up mentally. I think it's a mental thing for a lot of people, which people probably don't want to hear if they're trying to improve their run. But
so cold showers, just get more like what we talked about on the last episode, just
cold showers to increase your ACFT. But hey, if the run is the thing you're struggling with, definitely getting your body fat percentage down is going to help, getting your body weight down, and then also just running more. I also like alternate forms of cardio for helping with this. I really like hill sprints because hill sprints are going to help you in the sprint, drag, carry. they're going to help out your cardio a lot, even for that run. And then they're also going to help you out in terms of leg strength and stamina. So if you do 10 sets of hill sprints, that's going to be a pretty good workout for helping with the ACFT. So if I was trying to just lift and make progress lifting while also scoring high on the ACFT, what that would look like for me would be a fairly normal looking 3 to 4 time a week compound lift heavy strength training routine, making sure that I have some sort of like turf sled work in there each day, maybe with either farmers carries, sled drags, or sled pulls. And then also doing 1 to 2 times a week, I would do some form of cardio, whether that's a hill sprints or rucking or running, and that should get you pretty close to a 550, if not way higher. So, I mean, yeah, I was able to get a 600 without running too much to train for it. But my runs is a lot faster than it used to be once my legs got stronger. So, I mean, I never broke 21 minutes in a 5K in all my years of cross country running. And now I got the 35-minute 5 mile. And that's,
that's
at
fast.
A heavier body weight, but just from my legs getting so much stronger and having so much more endurance from going through phases of doing Arnold 20 rep squats. So don't sleep on building endurance and strength in your legs through squatting and deadlifting, especially at higher reps. If you've never tried a program with 20 rep squats, try that, and I bet that'll increase your ACFT score a little bit.
All right. Is that everything?
I think that's everything we've got for this episode. So if you're in the Army, if you know someone in the Army or another military service branch, this episode's probably a very good episode for our service members. So,
yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us today at Weights and Wealth. And don't forget to apply today's lessons to live healthy and wealthy.
If this conversation will contribute to your fitness and financial gains, please share it with a friend or family member and give a 5-star review so more people can lift bigger weights and get bigger bank accounts.